Welcome to your weekly motivation. I've got a question for you this week, and that question is this: how's your heart? As I ask you that question, what immediately comes to mind? Maybe you think physically. Physically, we've got to think about how our hearts are, specifically here in the United States. This year in 2020, and for the last number of years, the number one cause of death in the United States will be heart disease, which is something that I am very keenly aware of because my dad and my grandpa both had heart issues at a young age. And it's something that I have to be even more aware of because I was an athlete in college and I had a doctor tell me one time that I either did something really, really good for my heart, I built it up, I strengthened it by playing sports, or else I weakened it and I'm going to have major issues. So I have to be aware of how my heart is. Second thing we may think of is emotionally. When we think about emotion in our culture today, it's often something that we derive from our heart, or at least that's where we believe that it comes from. And in our culture where emotion is at an all-time high potentially, we've got to think about how our heart is. How's your heart doing? The third aspect of where our heart is spiritually. Because in Scripture, there is a solid body of evidence that tells us that when they talk about the heart, they really believe it's the essence of who we are. It's the place that everything comes from. Where reason and thought and emotion originate is within your heart. Now, we separate the two. We think about reason and thought coming from our mind and emotion coming from our heart. But when we really analyze it and put it all together, I think from here, I respond from here, I express my emotion from here. The heart is a very important part of who I am. And in Scripture, it talks about that. It says in Proverbs chapter 4, Solomon is writing, he says that you must guard your heart because from it everything flows. Scripture also talks about how the heart is deceitful above all else, and yet it also tells us that from our heart comes truly who we are. What's going on inside of me is coming from my heart and flowing out for all to see. And one area that Scripture tells us that's abundantly evident is through our words. See, as we feel within our hearts, as things flow from us, it comes out of our mouths. In fact, Jesus himself said this in Luke 6:45. He said, "A good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of." What's coming out of your heart? If we were to look at the words that we've all said over the last couple of weeks, and we were to ask that question about our culture at large, and we were to deduce the answer based off of what it is that's been said, what would it be? I think the answer is that our hearts aren't very good. They're not in a good place. And maybe today, as you think about your heart, maybe you have a hard heart, or maybe you have a sad heart, or maybe you have a soft heart, or maybe you have a joy-filled heart. But Jesus told us that what comes out of our mouth will be a reflection of what's inside our heart. I've had to have this conversation with a number of people recently. In fact, I posted something on Facebook and I led a Devo this week talking about this and got such positive response that I wanted to make it the content of this video because it's something that we really need to think about. As we're expressing our words and we're talking about other people, and we're saying things, what I've talked to many people about this week is that as we're saying things about others, it's not a reflection on them. Rather, it's a reflection of who I am and where I'm at. And I think that is true. And I think that's exactly what Jesus was talking about when he said the good stored in our heart will come out specifically through our mouths. So as we think about where our heart is, we need to make sure that we're guarding it, that we're understanding it, and that good is flowing out of it. As a dad, I get this. In fact, I understand this because right now I'm in the process of helping my kids understand what they say specifically to each other and to others is a reflection of who they are inside. And I need to make sure that as a father, I'm shepherding my child's heart. I read a book a number of years ago called that, Shepherding a Child's Heart. And what it said is, and one of the things I absolutely hated about it was that it told me that I had to make sure that my heart was good first before I could then encourage others with theirs. And so I need to be someone who has a good heart, someone that is analyzing it on a regular basis so that I can be joy-filled. One of the things that's helped is getting to know my kids even more in this season over the last number of years than I have before. Having great conversations with them. And at the end of the day, just having fun with them. You'll see over my shoulder right here is a pile of pillows. My kids have created a pit of pillows to jump into. As I've thought about where my heart is, I've looked at my kids and I've started to think, maybe I need to be more like them, to have a child's heart. As I shepherd their heart, I need to have their heart, full of love and joy and excitement for life in a way that sometimes maybe I think I've lost. And I need to get that back so then I can be someone who has that in me and I can express it then to others. So where are you at? Where's your heart? I would ask that in this season, you should check it. Physically, we want you here for a really long time. Emotionally, keep it in check. And spiritually, make sure that's in a good place. So what flows from it can be a reflection not just of you, but of the Spirit of God in you. So when the world sees you, they see Jesus in you. Have a great week. See you next week.